My son was sitting at my dining table with a corporate attorney when he told me he'd already transferred my publishing company into a trust he controlled. The independent press I'd built over 41 years. The business generating $52,000 monthly from book royalties, distribution contracts, and literary rights management. Because I'd supposedly signed documents during my confused period last spring authorizing the transfer. And he was now protecting the family legacy by assuming control of all operations, finances, and decision-making authority while I transitioned into a consultant role with appropriate compensation. Mom, the paperwork is filed. The transfer is complete. Effective immediately, Ashford Literary Holdings is under trust management. I'm the trustee. You're listed as founder emeritus with consulting status. Mom, this protects everything you built, ensures professional management, maintains family control. You should be relieved. I looked at my son, at Trevor, 46 years old, the child I'd raised while building the publishing company from a single literary magazine into a press with 83 authors under contract. The person who just told me he'd taken everything I owned. I never signed transfer documents. The attorney, a woman named Victoria Lang, spoke up smoothly. Mrs. Ashford, you signed the documents on April 14th. The notarization is valid. The filing is complete. The transfer is legal. You authorized your son to assume management through the trust structure. It's all documented. I don't remember signing anything in April. Trevor's voice carried practiced concern. That's exactly why this was necessary, Mom. You're 79. You've been having memory issues, confusion. You signed the documents, but you don't remember. Mom, that proves you need professional management. You need protection from yourself. That's what this trust provides. I don't have memory issues. Mom, you forgot my birthday last month. You missed 2 author meetings. You called me by Dad's name 3 times in one conversation. Mom, you're declining. Everyone sees it. The trust protects you, protects the authors, protects the business. This is help, not harm. I looked at my son, at Trevor who'd somehow accessed my business documents, who'd hired an attorney, who'd filed paperwork transferring my company into his control, who'd told me I signed documents I'd never seen, who'd cited memory issues I didn't have. And I understood something important. This wasn't about protecting me. This was about taking my company, about convincing everyone I was failing so he could access an asset I owned, about framing theft as family protection. I didn't yell, didn't argue about my competence, didn't try to prove I remembered everything clearly. I just looked at Trevor and Victoria, at these people who thought I'd accept losing everything because they'd manufactured evidence I'd authorized it. Get out of my house, both of you. Mom, we need to discuss transition plans. Get out now. After they left, I sat in my dining room, the room where I'd negotiated contracts with authors for decades, built relationships that became bestsellers, created a literary community, and I thought about what had just happened. My son had transferred my company into a trust he controlled, had told me I'd signed documents I'd never seen, had cited memory issues I didn't have, had presented the theft as protection, had filed legal paperwork making it official. They thought I'd accept it, thought telling me I'd forgotten would make me doubt myself, thought presenting completed paperwork would make resistance seem impossible. That was their first mistake. They thought I was broken. That being told I'd authorized my own disenfranchisement would make me believe I was failing, that I'd accept loss of control because they'd made it look official. That was their first mistake. Now listen, before I tell you what happened when my son decided to take control of the publishing company I'd built over 41 years, before I show you what a 79-year-old woman who created a literary press from nothing can do when someone thinks she'll just accept being sidelined, I need you to do something. If you're watching this and someone has ever told you that you authorized something you know you never approved, hit subscribe right now. Comment where you're from. Because what happened when I didn't stop my son immediately but prepared my response carefully, you need to hear every second. Turn on notifications. This goes places Trevor never imagined. After they left, I made my first call. to someone Trevor didn't know about. My goddaughter's husband, Mitchell Hayes. He was a forensic document examiner. Someone who analyzed signatures, detected forgeries, authenticated paperwork. Mitchell, I need help. My son claims I signed transfer documents for my publishing company. I don't remember signing anything. I don't believe I did. Can you examine documents to determine if a signature is authentic? Yes, that's exactly what I do. Do you have copies of the documents? Not yet, but I'll get them. Mitchell, if my signature was forged, can you prove it? If it's forged, yes. Forgery leaves forensic evidence. Hesitation marks, inconsistent pressure, unnatural stroke patterns. If someone forged your signature, I can likely prove it, but I need the documents. I'll get them. Mitchell, can you keep this confidential? Not tell anyone, including my goddaughter. Attorney-client privilege. Everything you tell me stays confidential. Second call. To my accountant, Bernard Foster. Bernard, has anyone contacted you about transferring Ashford Literary Holdings into a trust? No, Dorothy, what's happening? My son claims I signed documents authorizing transfer of the company into a trust he controls. He claims the transfer is complete. Bernard, have you received any transfer notifications? Any inquiries about changing financial management? No, Dorothy, if the company was transferred into a trust, I'd receive documentation, change of ownership filings, new tax structure notifications. I've received nothing. Are you sure this transfer actually happened? Trevor says the paperwork is filed, that it's complete. But Bernard, if it's real, wouldn't you know? Absolutely. Dorothy, I'm checking our records now. I see no evidence of any transfer, no trust formation, no change of ownership. Either this transfer hasn't actually been filed, or Trevor is lying about it being complete. That was the moment I understood. Trevor was bluffing. He had documents, maybe even forged signatures, but he hadn't actually completed the transfer. He'd presented it as finished to make me think resistance was pointless, but the transfer wasn't real yet. That gave me time Trevor didn't know I had, time to prepare while he thought I was accepting defeat. Third call, to my attorney, Helen Ortega. Helen, my son claims I signed documents transferring my publishing company into a trust he controls. I don't remember signing anything. I believe my signature may have been forged. What do I do? Dorothy, first, don't sign anything else. Second, get copies of these alleged documents. Third, get forensic analysis of the signature. If it's forged, that's fraud, that's identity theft, that's criminal. Dorothy, we'd file injunctions blocking any transfer. We'd report the forgery to authorities. We'd protect your company completely. But we need proof. I'm getting forensic analysis. Helen, what if Trevor actually files the transfer documents before I can stop him? Then we file emergency motions revering the transfer. We prove the signature was forged. We demonstrate you never authorized this. Dorothy, even if Trevor files paperwork, we can undo it if we prove fraud. Don't panic. Gather evidence. We'll fight this. Fourth call, to my physician, Dr. Raymond Cross. Raymond, my son is claiming I have memory issues, that I'm confused, that I forgot signing important documents. I need comprehensive cognitive testing proving I'm completely capable. Dorothy, you were here last month. You were sharp as ever. But yes, come in tomorrow. We'll do full cognitive evaluation, memory testing, mental status examination. I'll write a detailed report. Dorothy, if your son is claiming incompetence, you need medical documentation proving otherwise. Fifth call, to the notary Trevor claimed had witnessed my signature. I'd found her name on the documents Victoria had showed me. Linda Morrison, commission number 847,362. I called the state notary commission. I need to verify a notarization. Notary Linda Morrison, commission 847,362, supposedly notarized my signature on April 14th. Can you confirm this notary exists and was active on that date? The commission clerk checked. Mrs. Ashford. We have no notary registered under that name and commission number. That commission number doesn't exist in our system. If documents show notarization by Linda Morrison, 847,362, that notarization is fraudulent. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Trevor hadn't just forged my signature. He'd invented a fake notary. He'd created completely fraudulent documents. This wasn't sloppy theft. This was systematic fraud. Sixth call, to my publishing company's operations manager, Dana Chen. Dana, has Trevor contacted you about changes to company management? Yes, 2 weeks ago. He said you were transitioning into a consultant role, that he'd be taking over operational decisions. He asked for access to financial records, author contracts, distribution agreements. Dorothy, I told him I'd need your written authorization. He said you'd be sending it. I never received authorization, so I didn't provide anything. Should I have told you? Yes, Dana, from now on, no information to Trevor without my direct, in-person authorization. No financial data, no author information, no contract details, nothing. And Dana, prepare comprehensive business records for the past 5 years. Financial statements, author lists, contract summaries, distribution agreements, everything. I need complete documentation of company operations. Dorothy, is everything okay? It will be. Just prepare those records. I'll explain later. Seventh call, Mitchell again. Mitchell, I found something. The notary listed on Trevor's documents doesn't exist. The commission number is fake. That means the notarization is fraudulent. What does that tell you? That whoever created these documents knew they were committing fraud. Real forgeries often use real notaries, someone who was bribed or tricked. Fake notaries mean the forger knew no real notary would authenticate the signature. Dorothy, this is sophisticated fraud. This is criminal. Eighth call, Helen again. Helen, the notary on Trevor's documents doesn't exist. The commission number is fake. That proves fraud, right? Yes, that proves the documents are fraudulent from creation. Dorothy, this isn't just forged signature. This is fabricated documentation. This is conspiracy. We need to move fast. Get me copies of those documents. Get forensic analysis scheduled. I'm preparing emergency filings. Dorothy, we're going to destroy this scheme before Trevor can execute it. After making the calls, I sat thinking about Trevor's strategy. He'd created fraudulent documents. He'd presented them as complete and filed. He'd cited my memory issues to explain why I didn't remember signing. He'd brought an attorney to add legitimacy. It was sophisticated, planned, designed to make me believe the theft was already accomplished and resistance was pointless. But Trevor had made mistakes. He'd bluffed about filing when he hadn't actually filed. He'd used a fake notary instead of finding a real one. He'd told me I'd signed when he knew I hadn't. Each mistake was evidence. Each lie was documentation of fraud. I didn't stop Trevor from taking control because I wanted him to think he was winning. I wanted him confident, assuming I'd accepted defeat, not knowing I was documenting everything. That silence, that apparent acceptance, that was strategic. That was preparation disguised as surrender. 2 days after Trevor's announcement, I visited Dr. Cross for cognitive evaluation. 3 hours of comprehensive testing, memory assessments, problem-solving evaluations, mental status examination, attention and concentration tests. After everything, Dr. Cross's report was unambiguous. Patient Dorothy Ashford, age 79, demonstrates excellent cognitive function across all assessed domains. Memory intact for recent and remote events. Reasoning sharp. Judgment sound. Attention and concentration normal. Mental status completely within normal limits. No evidence of cognitive decline. Patient is fully capable of managing complex business operations and making sophisticated decisions. Any claim of memory impairment or confusion is medically unsupported. I had the report notarized by a real notary, made 15 copies, sent them to Helen, Mitchell, Bernard, kept several for myself. Evidence that Trevor's claims about my memory issues were false. Evidence that I was completely capable. Evidence that his justification for the trust was manufactured. 3 days after Trevor's announcement, I received copies of the fraudulent documents from Victoria Lang. She'd sent them thinking I was accepting the transfer. thinking I'd want copies for my records. I immediately sent them to Mitchell for forensic analysis. Mitchell, these are the documents. Can you prove the signature is forged? Mitchell called back 4 hours later. Dorothy, this signature is definitely not yours. I compared it to authentic signatures from your business documents. The forged signature shows multiple forensic indicators of forgery: unnatural hesitation marks, inconsistent pressure, tremulous strokes, careful drawing rather than fluid signing. This wasn't signed by you. This was drawn by someone trying to mimic your signature. I can prove it definitively. How long until you have a written report? I'll have it ready tomorrow. Dorothy, this is clear forgery. Very clear. Whoever did this isn't a professional forger. They tried to replicate your signature by looking at examples and drawing it carefully. That leaves obvious evidence. This will be easy to prove in court. 4 days after Trevor's announcement, Helen filed emergency motions. Temporary restraining order preventing Trevor from accessing or controlling any aspect of Ashford Literary Holdings. Injunction blocking any attempted transfer of business ownership. Motion to compel Trevor to produce all documents related to the alleged trust. The hearing was scheduled for 10 days later. 5 days after Trevor's announcement, Trevor called me. Mom, we need to discuss transition logistics, author contracts that need your signature as founder emeritus, financial protocols, office access. Mom, the trust is operational. We need to coordinate the handoff. There is no trust, Trevor. The documents are fraudulent. The signature is forged. The notary doesn't exist. I'm blocking the transfer. Silence. Then, Mom, you're confused. You signed the documents in April. You're forgetting again. That's exactly why the trust is necessary. I have cognitive evaluations from Dr. Cross proving I'm completely capable. I have forensic analysis proving the signature is forged. I have verification from the state proving the notary doesn't exist. Trevor, I know what you did. I have proof, and I'm stopping it. Mom, you're making a mistake. Fighting this will embarrass you, will make you look paranoid, will damage the company. Just accept the transition gracefully. I'm not accepting theft. Trevor, you forged documents. You invented a fake notary. You lied about me having memory issues. You tried to steal my company by manufacturing evidence I'd authorized it. That's fraud. That's criminal. And I'm prosecuting it. You'd prosecute your own son. Mom, that's vindictive. It's protective. You tried to steal from me. I'm protecting myself. Trevor, we're done. I'll see you in court. After the call, I thought about what I'd just done. I'd revealed that I knew, that I'd documented everything, that I was fighting back. Part of me wondered if I should have stayed silent longer, let Trevor make more mistakes. But Helen had advised, once we file emergency motions, he'll know you're fighting. Better to confront him directly. Put him on notice that you're prepared. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Trevor's wife, Melissa. Dorothy, I need to talk to you about Trevor, about what he's planning. Can I come over? Melissa arrived an hour later, looking stressed, carrying documents. Dorothy, I didn't know what Trevor was planning until after he did it. He told me he was helping you transition. That you'd agreed. That you'd signed documents. Dorothy, I believed him. But then I found these. She handed me a folder. Inside were documents showing Trevor's financial situation. Credit card statements showing $73,000 in debt. Business loan statements showing $185,000 owed on a failed investment. Bank statements showing accounts near zero. Dorothy, Trevor is drowning financially. He's been hiding it from me, from everyone. He took out business loans without telling me, ran up credit cards, lost money on investments I didn't know about. Dorothy, he's desperate. That's what this is about. He wants my company to cover his debts. Yes, Dorothy, I found emails between Trevor and Victoria Lang. Planning this, they discussed strategy, how to get you to voluntarily transfer the company, how to use claims of memory issues if you resisted. They planned this for months, and I had no idea. Why are you telling me this? Because it's wrong. Because Trevor lied to me too. Because I won't be part of stealing from you. Dorothy, I'm testifying, in the hearing, against Trevor. I'm bringing these financial documents, these emails, everything. I won't let him steal from you. Melissa, if you testify against Trevor, your marriage is probably over. My marriage is already over. I'm married to someone who'd steal from his own mother, who'd forge documents, who'd lie to me for months while planning fraud. Dorothy, I'm done. I'm testifying, whatever you need. I took the documents, added them to the growing evidence file. Financial records showing Trevor's desperation, emails proving premeditation, his wife willing to testify against him. Trevor's scheme was collapsing before the hearing even started. 6 days after Trevor's announcement, something else happened. 3 of my authors contacted me, all telling similar stories. Dorothy, Trevor called me, said you were stepping down, that he'd be managing contracts going forward. He asked me to sign amended contracts giving him authority over my literary rights. Dorothy, I told him I'd wait to hear from you directly. Should I have told you sooner? Trevor had been contacting authors, trying to get them to sign contracts recognizing his authority, building evidence that he was the legitimate manager, creating documentation supporting his takeover. It was systematic, strategic. Trevor had been preparing for months. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. I sent all 3 authors the same message. Trevor has no authority over Ashford Literary Holdings. Any contracts he presents are fraudulent. Do not sign anything. I remain the sole owner and operator. Normal business operations continue unchanged. 7 days after Trevor's announcement, I received another unexpected contact. From Victoria Lang, the attorney who'd presented the fraudulent documents. Mrs. Ashford, I need to speak with you confidentially, not as Trevor's attorney. As someone who made a mistake, can we meet? We met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. Victoria looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Ashford, I need to tell you something. When Trevor hired me, he told me you'd sign the transfer documents willingly, that you'd consulted with your own attorney, that this was planned transition with your full consent. He showed me the signed documents. I verified the notarization, or I thought I did. Mrs. Ashford, I didn't know the notary was fake. I didn't know the signature was forged. You're telling me you believe Trevor? Yes, and I was wrong. Mrs. Ashford, after your call to Trevor, I did my own investigation. I contacted the notary commission, confirmed the notary doesn't exist. I had the signature analyzed by my own expert, confirmed it's forged. Mrs. Ashford, I was used. Trevor lied to me. He used my law firm's credibility to add legitimacy to fraud. I'm withdrawing as his attorney, and I'm willing to testify about how he deceived me. Why are you telling me this? Because I won't be part of fraud. Because I made a mistake trusting Trevor, but I won't compound it by helping him continue. Mrs. Ashford, I'm sorry. I should have verified more carefully. I should have insisted on speaking with you directly. I failed, but I'm trying to make it right now. I looked at Victoria, at the attorney Trevor had hired to add legitimacy to his scheme, who discovered she'd been manipulated, who was now offering to testify against him. Victoria, I accept your testimony, and I appreciate you coming forward, but you should know, you should have verified before participating. That's your professional responsibility. I know, Mrs. Ashford, I'm filing a bar complaint against myself, reporting my own failure to properly verify. I made a serious mistake. I'm taking responsibility for it. 8 days after Trevor's announcement, I had comprehensive documentation. Forensic analysis proving forged signature. Verification proving fake notary. Cognitive evaluations proving my competence. Financial records showing Trevor's desperation. Emails proving premeditation. Melissa willing to testify. Victoria willing to testify. 3 authors documenting Trevor's unauthorized contact. Everything Helen needed for the emergency hearing. The night before the hearing, I sat alone in my home office, the place where I'd built Ashford Literary Holdings from a dream into a reality over 41 years, and I thought about what was coming. Tomorrow I'd face Trevor in court. I'd present evidence of his fraud. I'd expose his lies. I'd stop his theft. I'd protect everything I'd built. Trevor thought taking control of everything meant he'd won. That presenting it as complete meant I'd accept it. that I'd surrender because fighting seemed overwhelming. He was wrong about all of it. I didn't stop him immediately because I wanted evidence. I wanted comprehensive documentation. I wanted him confident and careless. I wanted time to build the case that would destroy him completely. That strategic patience, that apparent acceptance, that was preparation disguised as defeat. Trevor took control of everything. I didn't stop him. Yet. But tomorrow, that yet would become action. Tomorrow, the preparation would become prosecution. Tomorrow, Trevor would learn what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. They thought I was broken when I didn't immediately fight back, when I let Trevor present his scheme without visible resistance, when I seemed to accept defeat. That was their first mistake. Because I wasn't broken, I was preparing, gathering evidence, building the case, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Tomorrow was that moment. Tomorrow, Trevor would learn the difference between taking control and actually having it, between presenting theft as complete and it actually being accomplished, between his mother appearing weak and her actually being strategic. Tomorrow, everything changed. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The emergency hearing was in a downtown courtroom at 9 a.m. I arrived with Helen 30 minutes early. Trevor arrived at 8:55 with a new attorney, a man named Richard Brennan who looked expensive and aggressive. The judge reviewed the filings. This is an emergency motion regarding alleged fraudulent transfer of a publishing company. Mrs. Ashford claims her son forged documents. Mr. Ashford claims his mother authorized transfer but has forgotten due to cognitive decline. Let's hear the evidence. Richard Brennan stood first. Your Honor, this is unfortunate family conflict rooted in Mrs. Ashford's declining health. She signed transfer documents in April authorizing her son to manage the family publishing company through a protective trust. Mrs. Ashford now claims she doesn't remember signing. Your Honor, that's exactly the cognitive decline the trust was designed to address. We have notarized documents. We have witness statements about Mrs. Ashford's confusion. We have evidence justifying protective intervention. Helen stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Ashford never signed any documents. The signature on Mr. Ashford's documents is forged. The notary listed doesn't exist. This isn't family disagreement. This is systematic fraud, and we can prove it. We started with Mitchell's forensic analysis. He testified for 30 minutes, walking through signature comparison, pointing out hesitation marks, pressure inconsistencies, unnatural strokes. Your Honor, I've examined over 3,000 disputed signatures in my career. This signature is clearly forged. It wasn't signed fluidly. It was drawn carefully by someone trying to replicate Mrs. Ashford's signature. I can prove it definitively through multiple forensic indicators. Then evidence about the fake notary. Your Honor, the notary listed on these documents, Linda Morrison, Commission 847,362, doesn't exist. The State Notary Commission confirms no notary with that name or commission number has ever been registered. This notarization is completely fraudulent. Richard objected. Your Honor, clerical errors in notarization don't invalidate underlying authorization. This isn't clerical error, Helen interrupted. This is invented notary. This is fabricated documentation. Your Honor, when someone creates a fake notary, that proves they knew they were committing fraud. No legitimate notarization process produces non-existent commission numbers. Then Dr. Cross testified. Your Honor, I evaluated Mrs. Ashford comprehensively 3 days ago. 3 hours of cognitive testing. Mrs. Ashford's cognitive function is excellent. Memory intact across all domains. Reasoning sharp. Judgment sound. There is zero evidence of decline. Mrs. Ashford is fully capable of managing complex business operations. Any claim of memory impairment is medically unsupported. Richard tried to challenge. Doctor, isn't it possible Mrs. Ashford had a temporary confused period in April that has since resolved? No, cognitive decline doesn't work that way. If Mrs. Ashford had significant memory impairment in April, there would be residual effects now. There are none. Mrs. Ashford's cognitive function is completely normal. She didn't have memory issues in April. She doesn't have them now. The claim of confusion is false. Then Melissa testified, Trevor's wife, against him. Your Honor, I found documents showing my husband's financial situation. He has $73,000 in credit card debt. He owes $185,000 on a failed business investment. He's desperate financially. I also found emails between Trevor and his previous attorney discussing how to get Dorothy to voluntarily transfer the company and how to use claims of memory issues if she resisted. Your Honor, they planned this fraud for months. Helen presented the emails, Trevor and Victoria Lang discussing strategy. If she signs willingly, perfect. If she resists, we claim memory issues and present the documents as something she signed but forgot. We need medical witnesses saying she's confused. The key is making this look like family protection, not takeover. Systematic planning, documented, undeniable. Then Victoria Lang testified, Trevor's former attorney, now testifying against him. Your Honor, Trevor Ashford told me his mother had authorized the transfer, that she'd consulted her own attorney, that this was planned transition. He showed me signed documents with notarization. I trusted him. I was wrong. Your Honor, after Mrs. Ashford's call to Trevor, I investigated independently. I confirmed the notary doesn't exist. I confirmed the signature is forged. Trevor lied to me. He used my firm's credibility to legitimize fraud. I'm testifying because I won't be complicit in it. Finally, I testified, walking through everything, Trevor's announcement, my investigation, the fake notary, the forged signature, my cognitive evaluation, the financial desperation, the planning emails. Your Honor, I never signed transfer documents. I never authorized Trevor to control my company. I never had memory issues. My son created fraudulent documents. He invented a fake notary. He lied about my cognitive decline. He planned this fraud for months to access my business and cover his debts. Your Honor, this is systematic theft disguised as family protection, and I have comprehensive evidence proving it. Richard Brennan's cross-examination was aggressive. Mrs. Ashford, isn't it true you're 79 years old, that you've been working very hard for decades, that you might benefit from assistance managing your business? I'm 79 and completely capable. I don't need assistance. I need protection from someone trying to steal my company. Mrs. Ashford, you seem very adversarial toward your son, very suspicious. Isn't that paranoia, not reality? It's not paranoia when the threat is real, when documents are forged, when notaries are invented, when planning emails exist. That's not paranoia. That's evidence-based understanding of systematic fraud. Mrs. Ashford, if you're so capable, why didn't you stop Trevor immediately? Why wait days before responding? I looked directly at Richard Brennan, then at Trevor, then at the judge. Because I wanted evidence. If I'd reacted immediately, Trevor would know I was investigating, would destroy documents, would change tactics. I stayed quiet deliberately. Let Trevor think I'd accepted his scheme. Let him continue planning. Let him contact authors. Let him build his case. While he thought I was surrendering, I was documenting. Your Honor, that's not weakness. That's strategy. That's what gave me comprehensive evidence to present today. The judge looked at me for a long moment, then at Trevor, then at the evidence. I've reviewed the evidence comprehensively. This is one of the clearest cases of attempted fraud I've seen. The signature is forged, multiple experts confirm it. The notary is fake, the state confirms it. Mrs. Ashford's cognitive function is excellent, her physician confirms it. Mr. Ashford's financial desperation is documented. The planning emails prove premeditation. The wife's testimony proves knowledge of fraud. The attorney's testimony proves intentional deception. This isn't family transition. This is systematic fraud. This is elder financial exploitation. This is attempted theft of a business through fabricated documentation. The emergency motions are granted. Trevor Ashford is permanently prohibited from any involvement in Ashford Literary Holdings. He is prohibited from contacting authors, accessing business records, or interfering with operations. Mrs. Ashford retains complete control of her company, and I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution, fraud, forgery, attempted theft, elder abuse. Trevor's face went white. Richard Brennan tried to speak. The judge cut him off. Mr. Brennan, your client attempted to steal his mother's company through forged documents and fake notaries. There's nothing to argue. Court is adjourned. After the hearing, Trevor tried to approach me. Helen blocked him. She doesn't want to speak with you. Mom, please, let me explain. I made mistakes, but I was trying to help. You were trying to steal. Trevor, you forged my signature. You invented a fake notary. You lied about my competence. You planned this for months. That's not help. That's criminal fraud. We're done. I walked away, and I didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, Melissa found me. Dorothy, I'm sorry, for not knowing, for not stopping him, for believing his lies. You testified against him. You brought evidence. Melissa, you chose right when it mattered. That counts for something. I'm filing for divorce. I can't stay married to someone who'd do this. Dorothy, I'm sorry you had to go through this. Sorry Trevor put you through this. You're not responsible for Trevor's choices. Melissa, you made your own choices. Good choices. That's what matters. 2 weeks after the hearing, the district attorney filed criminal charges. Trevor Ashford, fraud, forgery, attempted grand theft, elder financial abuse, conspiracy. If convicted, up to 9 years in prison. The arraignment was scheduled for 6 weeks later. 3 weeks after the hearing, something happened that showed me how much deeper Trevor's plans had gone. Dana called from the publishing company. Dorothy, I need to tell you something about Trevor, about things he did before you stopped him. What things? Trevor contacted 12 of our major authors, told them you were stepping down, told them he'd be managing contracts, told them they should sign amended agreements giving him authority. Dorothy, 3 authors signed before I found out. Trevor has signed contracts claiming he has authority over their literary rights. Which authors? She named them, 3 of our best-selling authors, whose royalties generated significant income. Dorothy, Trevor has contracts. He might try to claim he legitimately controls those rights, that those authors authorized him. I called Helen immediately. Trevor got 3 authors to sign contracts before we stopped him, contracts giving him authority over their literary rights. Can he use those to claim partial control? Not if the authors were deceived. Dorothy, did Trevor tell those authors you'd authorized his management? Did he misrepresent his authority? Yes, he told them I was stepping down, that I'd authorized the transition. That's fraud. The authors signed based on lies. Then those contracts are voidable. We'll contact the authors. Explain Trevor had no authority. Explain they were deceived. We'll have them void the contracts and sign corrected agreements with you. Dorothy, this is cleanup. It's manageable. Over the following week, Helen and I contacted the 3 authors. Explained Trevor had no authority, that he'd lied about my authorization, that the contracts he'd gotten them to sign were fraudulent. All 3 authors were angry, felt manipulated, immediately voided Trevor's contracts and signed corrected agreements with me. Dorothy, I'm so sorry. Trevor said you'd approved this. I would never have signed without talking to you directly. I should have verified. 1 month after the hearing, Trevor's criminal attorney reached out to Helen. We'd like to discuss a plea deal. Mr. Ashford is willing to plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for probation and restitution. Helen consulted me. Dorothy, Trevor would plead guilty to attempted fraud and forgery, 3 years probation, $40,000 restitution for your legal fees and damages, permanent prohibition from any involvement in your business. He'd avoid prison. What do you think? What about the authors he deceived? The contracts he fraudulently obtained? Those are civil matters. The authors can sue him separately if they want. The criminal plea doesn't cover that. But Dorothy. With Trevor's plea, you have stronger civil cases. His admission of fraud strengthens everything. I thought about whether Trevor should go to prison, about whether probation was enough. I'll accept the plea deal on one condition. Trevor writes a full confession, admitting he forged documents, admitting he invented a fake notary, admitting he lied about my competence, admitting he planned this for months to cover his debts. apologizing not for getting caught but for doing it. I want it signed, notarized by a real notary, part of the court record. Trevor agreed. His confession arrived 2 days later. I, Trevor Ashford, acknowledge that I forged my mother's signature on trust documents. I created documentation using a fake notary. I lied about my mother having memory issues. I planned this fraud for 3 months. I did this because I was drowning in debt. I owed $258,000 between credit cards and failed business investments. I saw my mother's publishing company as my solution. I convinced myself I was protecting the family business while secretly planning to access it to cover my debts. My mother never signed transfer documents. She never had memory issues. She never authorized anything. I lied about all of it. I forged her signature. I invented a notary. I deceived my attorney, my wife, and company authors. My mother didn't stop me immediately, not because she accepted my scheme, but because she was gathering evidence. While I thought she'd surrendered, she was documenting everything. She stayed strategically silent while building the case that destroyed my fraud. I am accepting this plea deal because I am guilty, not because of legal strategy, because I committed crimes against my mother. I forged documents. I lied systematically. I tried to steal her life's work. I'm sorry for doing it, for planning it, for executing it, for using claims of her decline as cover for theft. Mom, you were right to fight back, right to prosecute, right to protect what you built. I destroyed our relationship through my choices. You just refused to enable those choices. I read Trevor's confession 3 times. My son finally admitting everything. Finally acknowledging the planning, the forgery, the lies, the theft. It didn't repair our relationship, but it documented truth, and that mattered. The plea deal was finalized 6 weeks later. Trevor pleaded guilty to attempted fraud and forgery, 3 years probation, $40,000 restitution, permanent prohibition from involvement in Ashford Literary Holdings. At the plea hearing, the judge addressed Trevor directly. Mr. Ashford, you targeted your own mother. You forged documents. You invented a fake notary. You lied about her competence. You tried to steal a business she built over 41 years. This is among the most calculated elder abuse cases I've seen. You're receiving probation only because your mother agreed to it. If she demanded prison, you'd be going. Remember that. Your mother showed you mercy you didn't deserve. Use this probation to become someone who deserves it. After the plea hearing, I stood in the courthouse hallway. Trevor was at the other end with his attorney. He looked at me once. His expression showed regret mixed with shame. I felt nothing, not anger, not satisfaction, just completion. He'd faced consequences. I'd protected my company. That was enough. 3 months after the plea deal, I was back running Ashford Literary Holdings completely. The 3 authors who'd signed fraudulent contracts with Trevor had filed civil suits against him for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. Trevor couldn't pay, he was bankrupt, but the suits were on record, documented consequences. Melissa's divorce from Trevor was finalized. She'd kept the house, gotten full custody of their 2 children, started rebuilding her life. She stayed in contact with me. Dorothy, thank you for letting me testify, for giving me the chance to choose right. I'm rebuilding, slowly, but honestly. You chose right when it mattered. Melissa, that counts for everything. 4 months after the plea deal, something happened that brought unexpected closure. One of Trevor's failed investments, the one that had lost $185,000, was actually fraudulent itself. Trevor had been the victim of someone else's scheme before he tried to run one on me. The FBI contacted me. Mrs. Ashford, your son was defrauded by a man named Marcus Riley. Riley ran a fake investment fund, took $185,000 from your son among other victims. We're prosecuting Riley. We wanted you to know your son was a victim before he became a perpetrator. That didn't excuse what Trevor did, but it explained something. Trevor had been desperate because he'd been victimized. He'd tried to victimize me to recover from being victimized himself. Hurt people hurt people. Victimized people sometimes victimize others. Understanding that didn't create forgiveness, but it created context. 6 months after the plea deal, I received an unexpected letter from Trevor. First contact since the plea hearing. Mom, I'm writing because I've spent 6 months thinking about what I did, about what you did in response, about the difference between us. I tried to take control of everything through fraud. You didn't stop me immediately. You let me think I was succeeding. Then you systematically destroyed my entire scheme with evidence I didn't know you were gathering. I've spent 6 months understanding why that worked, why my fraud failed while your response succeeded. The answer is simple. I acted desperately and obviously. You responded strategically and invisibly. I made noise. You gathered evidence. I thought immediate action was power. You understood preparation was power. Mom, you taught me the most expensive lesson of my life. That real power isn't taking control. It's having control because you've built something that can't be taken. That real strength isn't dramatic action. It's quiet preparation. That real intelligence isn't winning quickly. It's winning completely. I tried to steal what you'd built over 41 years. You protected it in 6 weeks of strategic silence. Your 6 weeks of preparation defeated my 3 months of planning. That's the lesson. That's what I'm learning in therapy. That's what's rebuilding me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I destroyed that possibility. I'm just acknowledging what I finally understand. You were right about everything. I was wrong about everything. And the difference between your strategy and my desperation determined everything. I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it, for the fraud, for the lies, for trying to steal from you, for using fake claims about your decline, for betraying you. You didn't stop me, yet, but that yet contained more power than anything I'd planned. That yet meant you were preparing, gathering evidence, building the case, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy me. That strategic patience, that's what I never understood. That's what defeated me. That's what I'm trying to learn now. Thank you for being strong enough to protect yourself, smart enough to document everything, strategic enough to wait for the perfect moment. Without those strengths, I'd have kept destroying people. Now I'm trying to rebuild myself. Trevor. I read Trevor's letter 3 times, him understanding what had happened, understanding why his fraud failed, understanding the difference between taking control and having it. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Trevor had learned the lesson. That was enough. But we wouldn't have a relationship. Some bridges once burned stay burned. 1 year after the plea deal, I was 80 years old when I made a significant decision. I was updating my will, making it explicit. Trevor Ashford is not included as beneficiary for Ashford Literary Holdings because he attempted to steal the company through forged documents and fabricated evidence. This exclusion is not due to any impairment on my part. This is a conscious choice made in response to his criminal conduct. Trevor told me I'd authorized transfer of my company. I hadn't. He forged my signature. He invented a fake notary. He lied about my cognitive decline. He planned systematic fraud to cover his debts. I didn't stop him immediately. I let him think his fraud was succeeding. Then I gathered comprehensive evidence and destroyed his scheme legally and permanently. That strategic patience, that's the difference between surrendering and preparing. Trevor thought my silence meant defeat. Really, it meant I was building the case that would protect everything. Ashford Literary Holdings will be transferred to the Ashford Literary Foundation upon my death. The foundation will continue publishing quality literature while supporting emerging authors through grants and mentorship. Trevor will receive nothing. This is consequence. This is permanent. The new will was signed, witnessed, filed. Clear, explicit, permanent. 18 months after the plea deal. Something extraordinary happened. One of our authors, someone Trevor had tried to deceive, won a major literary prize. Her novel about family betrayal and recovery became a bestseller. At the awards ceremony, she acknowledged me publicly. Dorothy Ashford taught me something important, not about writing, about strength. When her own son tried to steal her company through fraud, she didn't panic. She didn't react immediately. She gathered evidence systematically. She built an overwhelming case. She protected everything she'd built through strategic patience. That's the strength I tried to capture in my novel. That quiet, strategic power. That understanding that sometimes the strongest response is careful preparation rather than immediate action. Dorothy, thank you for showing us that strength isn't loud. It's silent until it's devastating. The audience applauded, for the author's achievement, and for me, for the example I'd apparently set. After the ceremony, several authors approached me. Dorothy, we didn't know the full story. We knew Trevor had tried something. We didn't know how calculated it was, how you'd responded. Dorothy, you protected this company. You protected all of us. Thank you. I protected what I built. You benefited because your contracts are with a company I own, not one Trevor stole. Thank you for trusting me, for staying with Ashford Literary Holdings through everything. 2 years after the plea deal, Trevor was completing his probation. He'd paid the full restitution, $40,000, working 3 jobs to do it, living in a small apartment, rebuilding his life slowly. Melissa told me about it. Dorothy, Trevor's working hard, really hard, not to get back in your life, just to rebuild himself. He's in therapy. He's paying debts honestly. He's living differently. Dorothy, I think he's genuinely changed. Not for you, for himself. Good, he should change. He should rebuild. Melissa, Trevor can live well, but he'll do it without me in his life. That consequence is permanent. I understand. Dorothy, I just wanted you to know the consequences you enforced taught him. He's different now. That matters, even if it doesn't change your relationship. It matters to him. That's enough. 3 years after the plea deal, 4 years after Trevor first announced he'd taken control, I was 82 years old when I did something I'd been planning. I published a book about what had happened. Yet, when strategic patience defeats immediate theft, I wrote it with help from Helen and Mitchell, telling the story, explaining the forensic analysis, teaching people how to recognize forged documents, how to protect businesses from family exploitation, how strategic patience can be more powerful than immediate confrontation. The book became popular among business owners, especially older entrepreneurs facing pressure from family members. Dorothy Ashford's story teaches us that we don't have to stop exploitation immediately. Sometimes the most powerful response is letting the threat develop while we gather comprehensive evidence. That's strategic patience, that's power. I did interviews, spoke at business conferences, taught workshops. At 82, I became an advocate for business owners protecting themselves from family exploitation. The core message was simple: don't react immediately, prepare strategically. Let threats develop while you gather evidence. Strike when you're ready, not when they're pushing. That principle, that's strategic. Yet, that became my legacy beyond just protecting Ashford Literary Holdings. It became education helping hundreds of people protect their businesses. 4 years after the plea deal, Melissa remarried. To someone honest and kind. She invited me to the wedding. I attended, watched her start fresh, watched her choose better. At the reception, she found me. Dorothy, thank you for coming, for supporting this, for not holding Trevor's choices against me forever. You chose right when it mattered. Melissa, that earned ongoing relationship. Trevor didn't. That's the difference. I see Trevor occasionally. For the kids, he asks about you sometimes, asks how you're doing. Dorothy, I think he wishes things were different, that he could fix what he broke. Some things can't be fixed. They can only be learned from. Melissa, if Trevor has learned, that's good for him. But it doesn't change our relationship. That's permanently broken. I understand. And I think Trevor understands too. He's not asking for reconciliation, just acknowledging regret. 5 years after the plea deal, 6 years after Trevor announced he'd taken control, I was 83 when I received news that brought unexpected closure. Marcus Riley, the man who'd defrauded Trevor, causing the desperation that led to Trevor's fraud against me, was convicted of running a $14 million Ponzi scheme. He received 18 years in federal prison. Trevor had been one of over 60 victims. Trevor's $185,000 loss was part of a massive fraud that destroyed dozens of lives. Understanding that didn't excuse Trevor's response. He'd chosen to victimize me rather than handle his own victimization honestly. But it completed the picture, showed the chain of harm, showed how fraud cascades, victims becoming perpetrators becoming victims. I didn't contact Trevor about Riley's conviction, but I thought about it. About how Trevor's desperation had driven him to fraud. About how my strategic response had stopped that fraud. About how consequences had maybe changed Trevor. About how sometimes the strongest thing you can do is wait, gather evidence, prepare carefully, strike decisively. About that, yet that small word containing so much power. I didn't stop him, yet. Yet meant preparation, yet meant strategy, yet meant building overwhelming response while appearing passive. That strategic patience, that had saved everything. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. 6 years after Trevor first announced he'd taken control of everything, I was 84 years old when something happened that brought the story into unexpected territory. A documentary filmmaker named Rachel Simmons contacted me. She was making a film about elder financial exploitation. She wanted to feature my story. Mrs. Ashford, what you did, recognizing the fraud, staying strategically silent, gathering comprehensive evidence, that's exactly what I'm trying to teach people. Your case shows how elderly business owners can protect themselves through preparation rather than panic. Would you let me tell your story? I agreed. Over 8 months, Rachel interviewed me extensively, reviewed court documents, interviewed Helen, Mitchell, Dr. Cross, Melissa, Victoria Lang, Dana, built comprehensive documentation of everything that had happened. The documentary premiered 1 year later. Yet, the power of strategic patience in elder exploitation. It showed everything: Trevor's fraud, the forged documents, the fake notary, my strategic silence, the evidence gathering, the hearing, the conviction, the consequences. At the premiere, I watched my own story unfold on screen, saw myself at 79 facing Trevor's theft, saw the evidence, saw the victories, saw the transformation of immediate threat into systematic protection. After the screening, a man in his 70s approached me. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm Gerald Patterson. 3 months ago, my daughter told me I needed to transfer my manufacturing company into a trust she'd set up for my protection. She had documents ready. She pressured me to sign immediately. Mrs. Ashford, I remembered reading about your case. I didn't sign. I investigated instead. Found out she'd forged preliminary documents. Found out she was drowning in debt. Found out she'd planned this for months. I stopped her before she completed the theft. Your story saved my company." "What did you do?" "Exactly what you did. I stayed quiet initially, let her think I was considering it. Then I gathered evidence, forensic document analysis, financial records showing her desperation, cognitive evaluation proving my competence. When I had everything documented, I confronted her. She backed down immediately when she realized I had proof. Mrs. Ashford, your yet strategy worked. That strategic patience gave me time to build an unbeatable case." Over the following months, I received dozens of similar stories. Business owners who'd recognized exploitation attempts, who'd stayed strategically silent, who'd gathered evidence, who'd protected themselves using methods I'd pioneered. My response to Trevor's fraud had become methodology. My strategic patience had become teachable approach. My yet had become principle helping hundreds. 2 months after the documentary premiered, I received an invitation I didn't expect. Harvard Law School wanted me to speak at their Elder Law Symposium. "Mrs. Ashford, your case has become required study in elder law courses. We teach the Ashford response, strategic patience, comprehensive documentation, forensic evidence gathering. We'd like you to speak about how you developed this approach." At 85, I stood before 200 law students and professors explaining what I'd done. I didn't develop a methodology. I protected myself. When Trevor told me he'd taken control of my company, I had a choice: react immediately with emotion or respond strategically with evidence. I chose evidence. That choice required patience. required appearing passive while actually preparing, required letting Trevor think he was winning while I documented his fraud. That strategic pause that gave me time to build overwhelming evidence. I tell you this not because I'm special, because the approach is replicable. When someone tries to exploit you, don't react immediately. Assess, document, gather evidence, build comprehensive proof, then strike when you're ready, not when they're pushing. That's strategic patience, that's power, that's protection. That's what defeated Trevor's fraud and what's helped hundreds of others protect themselves. After the speech, students approached me with questions. Mrs. Ashford, how did you stay calm while Trevor was actively trying to steal from you? How did you know when to stop being patient and start acting? What if Trevor had actually filed the transfer documents before you gathered evidence? I answered each question honestly. I stayed calm because panic helps exploiters. I knew when to act because I'd gathered sufficient evidence. If Trevor had filed documents, I'd have reversed them through fraud proof. Preparation ensures you can undo harm even if you can't prevent it. 3 months after the Harvard speech, something extraordinary happened. The American Bar Association created new best practices for elder financial exploitation cases. They called it the Ashford Protocol. The protocol recommended, when elderly clients report exploitation attempts, attorneys should advise strategic patience while gathering evidence rather than immediate confrontation. Comprehensive documentation, forensic analysis, medical evaluation, financial records, before legal action. Building overwhelming cases through preparation rather than rushing to court. My response to Trevor's fraud had changed legal practice, had become standard approach taught to attorneys nationwide. Helen called me after the ABA announcement. Dorothy, do you understand what you've done? You've changed how attorneys handle these cases. Before your case, the standard approach was immediate restraining orders and emergency guardianship fights. Now, attorneys are advising strategic evidence gathering first. You've transformed the field. I just protected my company. You created methodology. Dorothy, that's legacy, not just personal victory, systematic change in how exploitation is defeated. 6 months after the ABA protocol was established, I was 85 when I made another significant decision. I established the Ashford Institute for Business Protection, a nonprofit providing free forensic document analysis, legal consultation, and cognitive evaluation for business owners facing family exploitation. I funded it with $2 million from my own assets, set up partnerships with forensic experts like Mitchell, attorneys like Helen, physicians like Dr. Cross, created a network providing comprehensive support. The goal, I explained at the launch event, is helping business owners prepare. We provide the tools I had access to: document analysis, legal advice, medical evaluation, to people who might not otherwise afford them. We teach strategic patience. We help people build overwhelming cases. We turn individual protection into systematic education. The Institute helped 90 people in its first year. By the second year, over 300. Each one learning strategic patience. Each one gathering evidence before acting. Each one protecting their businesses using methods I'd developed. 1 year after establishing the Institute, Trevor contacted me through Melissa. First outreach in years. Dorothy, Trevor wants you to know he's completed his probation. He's rebuilt his finances honestly. He's working as a financial counselor helping people avoid debt problems. Dorothy, he's using his experience, both being defrauded by Riley and trying to defraud you, to help others. He wanted you to know. Why is he telling me this? I think he wants you to know the consequences you enforced worked, that he's different, not to get back in your life, just to acknowledge that the lesson was learned. Good, he should help others. He should use his experience productively. But Melissa, that doesn't change our relationship. Trevor can live well, but without me. I told him you'd probably say that. He said he understands. He's not asking for anything, just wanted you to know. 18 months after establishing the Institute, something happened that tested everything I'd built. A case came through the Institute that was eerily similar to mine. an 80-year-old woman named Patricia Grant. She owned a successful architecture firm she'd built over 35 years. Her daughter had presented documents claiming Patricia had transferred the firm into a trust the daughter controlled. Patricia didn't remember signing anything. The institute provided forensic analysis. The signature was forged. The notary was fake. The daughter had manufacturing the entire scheme. But unlike Trevor, Patricia's daughter had actually filed the transfer documents. The firm was legally transferred, based on fraudulent documentation, but legally filed and recorded. Patricia was fighting to reverse completed theft, not prevent pending theft. I worked with Patricia directly, teaching her the approach. We prove fraud comprehensively. We show forged signature, fake notary, your excellent cognitive function, your daughter's financial desperation. We build overwhelming evidence. Then we file to void the transfer based on fraud. Patricia, this is harder than prevention, but it's possible. Over 6 months, we built Patricia's case. Forensic analysis, medical evaluation, financial records, witness testimony. Everything needed to prove the transfer was fraudulent and must be reversed. The hearing was similar to mine. Patricia's daughter claiming memory issues. Patricia presenting overwhelming evidence of fraud. The judge ruling decisively. The transfer is voided. Mrs. Grant retains complete ownership of her architecture firm. The daughter is referred for criminal prosecution. After the hearing, Patricia found me. Dorothy, thank you. Without the Institute, I couldn't have afforded this defense. Without your methodology, I wouldn't have known how to build this case. Dorothy, you saved my business. You taught me how to fight back strategically rather than emotionally. You saved your business. I just provided tools and approach. Patricia, you did the work. You gathered evidence. You stayed strong. That's your victory. But Dorothy, I learned it from you. Your yet principle, that strategic patience, that's what gave me time to build this case. You didn't just protect yourself. You taught hundreds of us how to protect ourselves. 2 years after establishing the Institute, I was 86 when the Ashford Protocol was expanded internationally. Law schools in 12 countries began teaching strategic patience approaches to elder exploitation. My case became required study in England, Canada, Australia, Germany. A British barrister contacted me. Mrs. Ashford, your approach is revolutionizing how we handle these cases in the UK. The traditional British approach was very confrontational, immediate court battles, public accusations. Your strategic patience approach is showing better results, more comprehensive evidence, higher success rates, better long-term outcomes. Mrs. Ashford, you've changed international practice. At 86, I'd become more than a person who'd protected her business. I'd become a methodologist whose approach was taught globally. My response to Trevor's fraud had transformed how thousands of professionals approached elder exploitation. That was legacy beyond anything I'd imagined. Not just surviving, teaching others worldwide how to survive, not just winning. Teaching others how to win, not just preparing strategically, teaching systematic preparation as best practice. 3 years after establishing the Institute, something happened that brought painful but important closure. Trevor's work as a financial counselor brought him back into contact with Marcus Riley, the man who defrauded him originally. Riley was in federal prison. Trevor was helping run a victim support group. They were both attending a restorative justice session. Melissa told me about it. Dorothy, Trevor, and Riley met, face to face, in a mediation session. Trevor told Riley how the fraud had affected him, the desperation, the poor choices, the attempt to victimize you, the consequences. Riley apologized, acknowledged his fraud had cascaded through Trevor to you. Dorothy, Trevor told Riley something important. What? That the consequences you enforced taught him what Riley's actions never could. That facing prosecution, paying restitution, losing his mother, those consequences changed him more than understanding he'd been victimized. Trevor told Riley, "My mother taught me through consequences what you couldn't teach me through explanation. That's real justice, not just punishment, transformation through accountability." I sat with that information. Trevor acknowledging that consequences had taught him. That my enforcement of accountability had created change his victimization hadn't. That meant something, not reconciliation, not relationship, but acknowledgement that the hard choice I'd made to prosecute rather than enable had worked. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is enforce consequences. Sometimes protection requires prosecution. Sometimes teaching happens through accountability rather than explanation. Trevor had learned. Through consequences I'd enforced, through accountability I'd demanded, through justice I'd pursued. That was enough. 4 years after establishing the Institute, 10 years after Trevor first announced he'd taken control, I was 88 years old when I wrote my second book. The Yet Principle, Strategic Patience as Power in Business Protection. It covered everything: my experience with Trevor, the methodology I'd developed, case studies from 300 Institute clients, systematic approaches to forensic analysis, psychological foundations of strategic patience, everything I'd learned and taught over 10 years. The book became required reading in business schools. MBA programs taught strategic patience in crisis management. Entrepreneurship courses used my case as example of protecting business ownership. Family business courses taught the Yet Principle as approach to family conflict. One review captured it perfectly. Dorothy Ashford didn't just protect her publishing company from her son's fraud. She transformed personal crisis response into systematic business methodology. She showed that immediate reaction isn't always strongest response. That strategic patience can build overwhelming advantage. That small word, contains more power than immediate action. At 88, I'd transformed attempted theft into international business education. Trevor's fraud had become curriculum taught to thousands. My response had become methodology studied globally. That was the ultimate irony. Trevor tried to take control of everything. I didn't stop him. Yet. That yet contained preparation that destroyed his fraud, and that preparation became education protecting thousands from similar fraud. Trevor's attempt to steal became my opportunity to teach. His fraud became my methodology. His crime became my legacy. 5 years after establishing the Institute, I received news that brought final closure to Trevor's story. Trevor had written a book of his own. From perpetrator to protector, how facing consequences changed everything. It detailed his fraud against me, his conviction, his probation, his transformation, his work helping others avoid debt problems and fraudulent choices, his understanding that consequences teach what mercy can't. Trevor sent me an advance copy, with a note. "Mom, I'm not asking you to read this. I'm not asking for relationship. I just wanted you to know I've spent 10 years understanding what you taught me through consequences. This book is my attempt to teach others what I learned. That consequences matter. That accountability creates change. That strategic patience you showed, that was love disguised as toughness. I understand that now. Thank you for being strong enough to enforce consequences I desperately needed." I read Trevor's book. It was honest, brutal. He described his fraud comprehensively, my strategic response, the evidence that destroyed him, the consequences that changed him. He wrote about the moment he realized I'd been gathering evidence while he thought I was surrendering. I announced I'd taken control of everything. Mom didn't fight immediately. I thought that meant she'd accepted it. Really, it meant she was preparing comprehensive response. That pause between my announcement and her action that contained more power than anything I'd planned. That silence was strategic. That apparent acceptance was evidence gathering. That patience was devastating preparation. Trevor's book became popular among people in recovery from various crimes. Trevor Ashford shows that consequences create change. That facing accountability teaches what avoiding it can't. That sometimes the people who enforce consequences against us love us most because they won't enable our destruction. I never contacted Trevor about his book, never acknowledged receiving it, but I was glad he'd written it, glad he'd learned, glad he was using his experience to help others. That was enough. Transformation didn't require reconciliation. Learning didn't require relationship. Trevor could live well, teach others, build something good, but without me in his life. Some consequences are permanent. Some bridges stay burned. Some relationships can't be rebuilt even when people change. That was okay. Trevor had learned the lesson. That was the goal, not restored relationship. Learned lesson, changed behavior, that was success. 6 years after establishing the Institute, I was 89 when I decided to transition leadership. I appointed Patricia Grant, the woman whose architecture firm I'd helped save, as the Institute's new executive director. Patricia, you understand what we do because you've lived it. You know the fear, the confusion, the strategic patience required. You're the perfect person to lead this work forward. Dorothy, this is your legacy. This is our legacy. Mine because I survived and taught. Yours because you learned and now teach others. Patricia, legacy isn't about one person. It's about transformation that continues beyond any individual. You'll lead this better than I can. Take it. Make it yours. Grow it beyond what I started. Patricia accepted. Over the following year, she expanded the Institute to 20 states, helped over 2,000 people, built partnerships with elder law organizations nationwide, transformed my initial vision into systematic movement. 7 years after establishing the Institute, 11 years after Trevor first announced he'd taken control, I was 90 years old when Harvard awarded me an honorary doctorate in law. For pioneering strategic approaches to elder financial exploitation defense, for transforming personal crisis into systematic protection, for teaching that patience is power, for showing that yet contains more strength than immediate action, for creating methodology that has protected thousands and changed international legal practice. At the ceremony, I gave a short speech. I didn't pioneer anything. I protected myself. The methodology came from necessity. The teaching came from understanding that my experience could help others. The transformation came from refusing to let attempted theft be the end of the story. Trevor tried to take control of everything. I didn't stop him yet. That yet changed everything. For me, for Trevor, for thousands of people who learned from what happened. That yet taught us that strategic patience is power. That preparation defeats immediate manipulation. That silence can be devastating when it's building overwhelming response. If this story touched you, please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional stories like this. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Somewhere out there, I might be reading.